This is the Louie Tee Network.
Me, your me, Louie Tee. Welcome to the 2017 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series, your guide to some of the biggest and hottest names of the 2017 NFL Draft. We're talking defensive linemen, and this next guy is a big one. And he's also generating the biggest conversation at the position. He's a guy with all the talent in the world, but does he love the game of football? Anytime we start questioning your love for the game, your motor, your effort, that makes me worried. But I tell you what, there's a lot of talent here. The production doesn't match the talent, and that's why a lot of people are chattering. I'm talking about Michigan State's Malik McDowell. Could he come in and impact a team from the word go? He's got that kind of potential. Will he fully blossom at the next level is the question. But we're going to talk about why this guy is so highly regarded in this draft and potentially a first-round pick for some team in the 2017 NFL Draft. Let's talk about Malik McDowell and his pros and why this guy is going to probably be a top 15, top 20 pick in the upcoming draft. Standing 6'6", 295 pounds, Malik McDowell is a big man, and that's the first pro. His size is extraordinary. Shades of Eric Armstead a couple of years ago. His running mate at Oregon last year in DeForest Buckner. This is a guy that kind of falls in line with those guys and their size. Love what he brings to the table in terms of size at 6'6", 295 pounds. Can stand up at the point of attack, can be physical, does everything you like with his size. Again, there's some things he needs to learn how to harness and learn how to use. Again, you got that body, use it. And there's some things that he can learn at the next level, but the size is there. And again, that's something you can't teach. Either you have it or you don't. And this guy has it in spades. Also, next pro, length. I think that's probably my most favorite thing with him is his length in terms of measurables. You know, when you start talking about athleticism, there's something else I like there that I'll talk about here in a second. But in terms of measurables, it's cool to be 6'6". That's nice. That's great. A lot of guys don't even know how to use it. One of the few guys in the league that's really tall but knows that he's tall and actually uses it to his advantage is Calais Campbell. But you see a bunch of these guys that are 6'6", 6'7", and they're not even batting down balls. They're not making their presence felt in the interior of the defensive line. And I just don't understand that. And so length is great only if you understand that you have the length and that you're tall and that even if you're not going to get to the quarterback, you can still affect the play. I don't know if he quite understands that yet. Maybe he will get that at the next level. Sometimes it takes a little bit of growth and seasoning. That's why I always tell you, I like my beef well seasoned normally, but this is a guy here that I think I would love to put the seasoning on if I'm a coach. He's raw right now. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on as well. But this is a guy that has all the tools that you're looking for at the next level. Speaking of which, my favorite thing about Malik McDowell is this next trait: explosiveness, initial burst. To me, that's what sets him apart from DeForest Buckner. That's what sets him apart from Eric Armstead. That's what sets him apart from a Calais Campbell. I don't even think Calais Campbell had this type of burst coming out of Miami. This guy's initial get off the football is electric. And when he wins, boogie, yoogie, when he wins off the snap, He can beat a double team. He can beat a single up one-on-one matchup and get into the backfield instantaneously with the handoff. I've seen him disrupt plays to the point where he messed things up, forcing fumbles in the backfield. So this guy's ability, now he will jump off sides. You can catch him trying to jump the snap. That explosiveness and that initial burst can backfire sometimes, but I tell you what, when he syncs it up correctly, times up the snap, and gets off the football, man, is it fun to watch. He is very explosive, and when he gets in the backfield, he's not one of these guys. I talked about Jonathan Allen and how he'll miss a tackle or two in the backfield. He's not missing. He's cleaning guys up. He gets back there. He's like, look, man, I came a long way, and I'm a big man. I'm not coming all the way back here and leaving empty-handed, man. You got to go on the ground. I'm sorry, I got to get you down. So love when he uses that explosiveness and initial burst to get into the backfield. It's probably, to me, his best trait that he is taking to the next level with him. Power and strength is the next pro. 23 reps of 2 1/4. You see it on tape. He can bull rush guys, take them back into the lap of the quarterback. I've seen him stand up double teams and really do a good job at the point of attack, taking on 2 defenders. When his pad level is right, he can take on 2 guys, no problems, stand them up and be in the way and clog up the interior of the offensive line and not allow them to have any space. So I think his strength and his power are very, very good for the position, especially with his size, because he's got this wiry setup. His frame is long and wiry. Unlike DeForest Buckner and even Eric Armstead to a certain degree, those guys were kind of thick-framed. Top to bottom, they were big guys. I think that's why he's a little bit more explosive than them. And also, he, to me, is a guy that is a little bit wiry in his frame and his setup. So you don't expect him to be extremely strong, but he is. And he has that ability, again, once the pad level is set where it needs to be and low enough, he has the ability to really hunker down and stop guys from pushing him around. Swim move. To me, that's his go-to move. When he's right, when he's quick, when he's engaged, when he is, from a stamina standpoint, at the top of the bar. I talk about stamina with big guys all the time, and it matters. Okay, a couple of times on tape, saw him tap out. Look, I want you to come out when you're tired. The last thing I want is for a 290, 300 pound, 310 pound guy to be in a game tired, because you're not going to get anything out of guys, especially when they're that size and they're tired. You're not going to get anything out of them. And so when he's right, and when this guy is fully engaged from a stamina standpoint and a mental standpoint, that swim move is as good as you will find in this draft. He has the ability to knife into the backfield and be a disruptive force. Speaking of which, that's the next pro, disruptiveness. Sometimes the stats don't show with the defensive lineman. You can't always go off of stats, especially when you're talking interior defensive linemen. A lot of times their production and their impact on the game goes unnoticed to the untrained eye. If you're just one of these guys looking at the stat sheet and looking at the stat box, you're not going to actually recognize the impact that a defensive lineman, especially an interior one, has on the football game. You have to actually watch these guys to see what they're doing. Sometimes the numbers don't tell the story with them. He's one of those guys that he may only have 2 tackles, 1 for a loss, and that's it, the entire game. But his impact in disrupting the rhythm and timing of an offense is unbelievable, okay? And a lot of times, it's something that can't be measured. And so I love the fact that this guy's just a disruptive force. When he's right, again, when he's right, when he's engaged, when he is at 100% in terms of stamina, or at 80 or 60 and still has something left in the tank, and he's going full throttle, this guy is a disruptive force in the backfield. Slipperiness, and I talked about that wiry frame, the ability to turn sideways, swim moving guys. He's a really slippery guy. I've seen him run some twists and stunts where he's able to come around and loop in and then slip off a guy and get into the backfield and make a play. So he's a slippery guy. For 6'6", 295, you don't generally hear the word slippery and 6'6", 295 put in the same sentence. But I'm telling you, This guy, I told you, with that wiry type of frame, is a little bit slippery. And again, hard to be wiry at 295 and 6'6", okay? Normally, again, those two words don't go together. Wiry and 6'6", 295 usually don't go in the same sentence. But in this particular case, he's slippery, he's wiry, and a guy that can get in the backfield and, like I said, be a disruptive force. Stack and shed. I think he does an adequate job of stacking and shed. Is he the best at it? No. But I think he does it enough to the point where you feel comfortable knowing that if you coach him up correctly on technique, hand usage, how to discard guys, when to. His biggest thing is needing to be more technically sound. All right, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But he stacks and sheds well enough for me to see that he has that ability. And that's something that, because I know you can, I expect you to be able to do that moving forward. And so I'd love to see him do that a little bit more, but I know it's in his arsenal, in his repertoire. I want to see him do that a little bit more often. And then versatility and upside are the final two pros. Let's start with the versatility. At Michigan State, they played him up and down the defensive line at both defensive end spots, both defensive tackle spots. You didn't know where this guy was going to line up from snap to snap. That's always a good thing. Shows that you have versatility. And not only from a positional standpoint does he have versatility, but he's also a guy that gives you scheme diversity and versatility, because you could play this guy at a 3-4 as a 5 tech, as a defensive end. You can play this guy as a 4-3 defensive end or a 4-3 interior tackle. So as a 3 tech. So I think there's a number of different things that this guy can do. And I don't think you have to worry about, does he fit my scheme? If you're playing defense, I think this guy can play in your defensive scheme. So that's something else that will benefit him. You don't rule this guy out because we run a 3-4 or we run a 4-3 or we're in our nickel a lot and we don't know if he can do this or he can do that. He can do it all. So I think he's a guy that will be able to fit in anyone's defensive scheme. Upside, I talked about upside and briefly. Let's elaborate on this. I'm not a huge upside guy. I don't really like talking about upside because, let's face it, everybody that's going to be selected over the next few days, or excuse me, in the upcoming weeks in the draft has upside. That's why you're drafting them, because you feel like they have upside and that they can grow as a football player in your program. So upside is overrated, but yes, some have more than others. And he's one of those guys that he has tremendous upside. That's why it's worth noting, because again, the production didn't meet the talent. And so when those two things have such a huge discrepancy and gap between them, then you want to know, okay, well, is this a coaching issue? Is this a guy that I can coach at the next level? Because if it is, then I want to put this guy on my team. I want to make this guy into the type of player that we feel like he can be at the next level. And the upside is definitely there with a guy like Malik McDowell. So I said all of that to say that this guy has everything you're looking for, but there's a but. Yes, there's a but with Malik McDowell. Of course there is. And that's his cons. Let's get to those right now. So I talked about lack of collegiate productivity earlier. Let's elaborate on that, because that's his first con. 20 tackles for loss and 7.5 sacks is all he has to his name in 3 collegiate seasons. Now, again, for a guy that saw a ton of double teams and didn't play on the most talented defenses at Michigan State. Now, there were some guys that have been selected into the National Football League. Don't get me wrong. Shalik Calhoun went last year to the Raiders in like the 3rd round. Of course, they've had a slew of corners be drafted in the league. So it's not like they haven't had guys be selected, but let's face it, they haven't had the most talent. Okay, and so it's much easier to double team a guy like Malik McDowell at Michigan State than it is, say, a Jonathan Allen at Alabama, where there's just talent everywhere and you pick your poison. You want to double Jonathan Allen? Okay, now Tim Williams gets a free run at the quarterback. And so he dealt with a number of double teams. He also dealt with an injury. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but no excuses. I'm not here to make excuses for the man. 20 tackles for loss in 3 seasons and only 7.5 sacks for a guy with as much talent as Malik McDowell doesn't make any sense. So the production doesn't meet the talent. That's always a problem, which always leads people to start asking questions, digging, and start probing. And that's when you start to get comments like, does he love football? Is he motivated? Does he have a high enough motor? We'll get to that a little bit later on, but let's talk about him being raw, because that's the next con. He's raw as can be. You will see his technique on tape, and it can be sloppy at times. There are times where he's doing that whole, I forgot the young man's name that the Patriots selected in the first round, I want to say, from Florida, tore his ACL, all that good stuff. I haven't really heard from him since he's been selected. Another one of those famous wasted first round picks by the New England Patriots. But nonetheless, he would always turn around and he would always, Malik McDowell does the same thing, which is just horrible. You don't ever want a defensive lineman turning his back to the offense. I mean, where do you serve a purpose doing that? I mean, how does that make you better? How does that benefit you at all? You don't ever want your defensive lineman to rush and then all of a sudden turn his back this way. What does that do? How does that benefit you? And he'll do that. Like I said, his technique, sometimes he doesn't realize, hey, I've got long vines. I got 34-inch arms. I'm 6'6". I should be extending my arms. Should be the first thing I should be doing on each and every single play so I can win from a contact standpoint. Sometimes he will not get his arms up, which will allow the lineman to get into his body, which is asinine. He should be winning in that regard on just about every snap, and sometimes he just doesn't. And that's part of the reason why he doesn't stack and shed as well, because he should be here. He should be keeping that lineman at bay, especially in run plays, standing them up, keeping them at a distance, and then getting rid of them when the ball carrier comes his way. And that doesn't always happen because he's raw. He needs to be taught the finer points and techniques of the position, how to use his body, because he's got a unique skill set and a unique body type. So he needs to learn how to use that, learn how to harness all of the things he's been blessed with. He'll become a much better football player because of it. But right now he is raw as can be. Foot injury, knee injury in 2016 really hampered him throughout the season. Saw his production fall and plummet from 2015 when he was one of the best defensive linemen in all of college football to just another guy, it seemed like, out on the field at times. I've seen him be dominant. You know, the Furman game in 2016, yeah, it was Furman. I get it. But again, you know how I feel about that. They put you in front of inferior competition, dominate. That's all I ask you to do. He dominated in that game. And so you see flashes from this guy. I just want to see him on a more consistent basis. That injury on the Carfax didn't help him in 2016, one iota. And then finally, the big, gigantic, enormous elephant in the room. Questions about his motor and his love for the game. Some people dubbed him as lazy. Other people say he doesn't love football. I don't know Malik McDowell. I'm not going down that road. But when you hear people question that, it is never a good thing. So I don't know what that really means for him. Is he one of these guys that you pay him, he gets fat, and he doesn't want to work? We've seen guys like that. Albert Hainsworth comes to mind as a guy that was just lazy. Did not want to work, didn't want to earn a paycheck. He just wanted someone to pay him. And so there are guys like that. We've seen that in the league. And so that those doubts always creep into people's mind when they start hearing guys, especially this size, that do they love football? You want guys that care, that love the game. But at the same time, I don't know him. I don't know if that is really a genuine problem that he has, or if this is just something that people make up as a narrative to try to explain why this guy wasn't more or didn't have higher production in college. Sometimes you get guys that ask questions and they get a little overzealous with them. And this could be one of those cases. Or maybe he is a guy that doesn't actually love. Look, don't fool yourself. I've told you this before. I'll tell you once more. Not every football player loves football. Just like you go to work and you may not love your job, but it's a paycheck. These guys, some of them feel the exact same way. They don't love football. It's a job. They go out, they do it, they collect their check, they go home to their family. So he could be one of those guys, doesn't really love football, but it's a way to earn revenue. So he'll do it, but he doesn't love it. That could be the case with Malik McDowell. I don't know the answer to that. I didn't see it on tape. I didn't see the laziness. I saw a guy that, when was tired, needed to come off the field. I could say that about just about every big 295-pound defensive lineman in the league. You get tired, you tap out. I saw him do that on tape, so I don't really know where all of this is coming from. I don't know where that narrative originated, but I didn't see it. Normally when you hear them ask that question, you see it on tape. I didn't. So I have no problems with Malik McDowell, like him as a first-round prospect. If you've got the right coach that can coach up this kind of talent, he could be a big-time selection for some team needing along the defensive line. That's Malik McDowell and his Draft Prospects 101 breakdown. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie Tee Network. Got more breakdowns coming your way, the mock draft coming your way. Stay tuned for all of that. More to come. I will see you next time. Have a good one.